Beijing, September 3rd, 2025. The heart of Beijing turned into a stage of symbolic power and military precision today as Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted a grand military parade that drew not only his own nation's armed forces, but also some of the most closely watched figures on the global stage. Among them, Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived to a carefully orchestrated welcome, signaling once again the deepening ties between Moscow and Beijing at a time of global turbulence. The morning air in Beijing was heavy with ceremony. Security was tight, the streets leading up to Tiananmen Square cleared, and thousands of soldiers in immaculate formation prepared for the spectacle. The event was not only a display of China's military strength, but also a projection of alliances, both old and newly fortified. Cameras first captured Russian President Vladimir Putin stepping onto the parade grounds, greeted warmly by his host. The symbolism was unmistakable, a handshake between Xi Jinping and Putin, flanked by red banners and the imposing presence of Chinese honor guards. The gesture, simple yet deliberate, echoed beyond the parade itself into the corridors of global diplomacy. Putin's presence came at a critical juncture in international politics. Russia, facing persistent Western sanctions and ongoing hostilities in Ukraine, has leaned heavily on China to blunt its isolation. For Beijing, welcoming Putin to the parade reinforced its defiance of Western pressure, as well as its willingness to cultivate a multipolar world order. As the two leaders walked side by side, Putin in his dark suit and Xi in his customary tunic, photographers jostled for the perfect shot. The imagery was choreographed to send a message of unity. Wide shots broadcast across networks showed both leaders strolling in relaxed conversation, pausing for posed photographs. Their body language was confident, calculated, and distinctly intentional. Putin's demeanor conveyed ease, even pride. His arrival was not low-key. It was meant to be seen, interpreted, and broadcast worldwide. Xi, for his part, maintained a measured composure, portraying himself as the host of a gathering where China's prestige and leadership were unquestioned. This was not merely a bilateral display. Soon, another controversial figure joined the frame, North Korea's Jong. Cameras tracked the trio, Xi, Putin, and Kim, as they greeted decorated war veterans. Each handshake with the elderly soldiers was carefully documented, with images of the three leaders standing shoulder to shoulder quickly circulating on social media and state outlets. It was a tableau laden with history and defiance, three leaders often cast as challengers to US and Western influence, together in a highly choreographed show of respect for past wars and present strength. The parade itself unfolded with predictable grandeur, columns of troops marching in tight formation, armored vehicles rolling past, and fighter jets slicing across the Beijing sky in meticulously timed flyovers. Yet, beyond the pageantry, it was the political optics that carried the most weight. For Russia, the occasion served as a platform to show the world that Moscow is far from isolated. For China, it was an opportunity to frame itself as the axis of a new global order, with Putin standing prominently as its partner. And for North Korea, the appearance of Kim Jong-un alongside these giants amplified his regime's relevance on the global stage. Putin's office, the Kremlin, confirmed that his visit underscored Russia's commitment to what it called a strategic partnership with China. While no official speeches were made on camera during the parade itself, the visual statements were louder than words. The images of Putin, Xi, and Kim resonated as deliberate counterweights to summits held in Washington, Brussels, or Tokyo. Observers noted that Putin's participation in Beijing came at a time when Moscow is intensifying its outreach to non-Western powers. Facing sustained sanctions from the US and Europe, Russia has turned eastward, emphasizing energy deals, military cooperation, and political solidarity with countries willing to defy Washington's dictates. For Putin, the optics of standing beside Xi Jinping, China's paramount leader, were invaluable. They bolstered his narrative that Russia remains a central power on the world stage. Analysts argue that the handshake between the two leaders carried as much weight as any military maneuver. It was a declaration of resilience. As one Beijing-based observer remarked, every shot of Putin walking beside Xi was designed to project the message that Russia has friends, powerful friends, and is not going to be pushed into irrelevance. For Xi Jinping, hosting Putin at the parade was equally significant. The Chinese leader has faced mounting scrutiny from Western capitals over Beijing's backing of Moscow in the Ukraine conflict, as well as growing tensions in the South China Sea and over Taiwan. By showcasing his bond with Putin, Xi was sending a clear message. China will chart its own course, regardless of Western pressure. The handshake scenes with veterans further emphasized continuity. By aligning himself with Russia and North Korea in honoring past sacrifices, Xi reinforced the narrative of shared struggle and solidarity against foreign interference. It was a subtle but deliberate alignment of historic memory with present-day alliances. The presence of Kim Jong-un added another layer of intrigue. Though less prominent than Putin or Xi, his appearance signaled North Korea's continued reliance on and alignment with its larger neighbors. The imagery of Kim shaking hands with war veterans alongside Xi and Putin was designed to place Pyongyang within the same orbit of defiance against Western dominance. For Kim, who rarely leaves his country, the parade was an opportunity to stand visibly among two of the most powerful leaders in the world. His inclusion, though brief in screen time, carried symbolic weight. The decision to highlight handshakes with war veterans was a powerful piece of choreography. These elderly men, decorated with medals, embodied not just personal bravery, but also the historical narratives that the current leaders seek to draw upon. By shaking their hands together, Xi, Putin, and Kim symbolically tied their current struggles to the legacy of past wars, particularly the battles against fascism and foreign invasion. The message was implicit. Just as their forebears had stood firm, so too would they. While the parade itself lasted only hours, the narrative it created will ripple for weeks. In Washington and Brussels, officials will pass every frame for signs of how deeply Russia and China are aligning. In Seoul and Tokyo, policymakers will view Kim Jong-un's inclusion as a fresh signal of North Korea's growing boldness. And in capitals across the global south, the display may be seen as an alternative vision of global leadership, one that rejects Western dominance. For Putin personally, the event may serve as domestic propaganda, showing Russian audiences that their leader is still welcomed with respect on the global stage. In a climate where the Kremlin's legitimacy is constantly tested, these images provide crucial validation. Journalists noted the precision with which the event was managed. Wide shots alternated with close-ups, ensuring no moment went undocumented. The poses, the handshakes, the walks, all were calculated to deliver a narrative of unity, strength, and continuity. Kremlin sources later confirmed that Putin's arrival was part of a pre-agreed sequence of appearances designed to maximize visibility. Even the apparent spontaneity of greetings with war veterans bore the marks of stagecraft. The leaders moved in sync, pausing just long enough for cameras to capture each handshake before moving on. The Beijing military parade of September 3, 2025 will be remembered less for the tanks and jets on display than for the choreography of its guests. Vladimir Putin's handshake with Xi Jinping, his walk beside the Chinese leader, and his appearance alongside Kim Jong-un were not incidental moments. They were deliberate signals broadcast to the world. At its core, the event was a declaration of defiance against isolation, against Western dominance, and in favor of a multipolar vision where Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang stand together. And while no major policy speeches were delivered, the words were written instead in images. The optics alone conveyed the message. Russia and China, with North Korea in orbit, remain determined to project strength on the global stage.